One of the most critical steps in breaking free from a narcissist's emotional grip is to stop feeding their ego, because that ego is their lifeline. Narcissists depend on what psychologists call narcissistic supply. A constant stream of admiration, attention, and validation from those around them. It doesn't matter if the attention is positive or negative. If you're praising them, they feel superior. If you're upset, they still feel in control. Either way, they're getting exactly what they want, emotional energy from you. When you are nice to a narcissist, especially when they have mistreated you, they don't perceive it as compassion. They see it as permission to keep crossing your boundaries, manipulating your emotions, and maintaining dominance over your thoughts and reactions. They see your kindness as weakness, not strength. And the more you try to win them over with empathy, the more they weaponize it against you. They may respond to your compliments or emotional generosity with smugness, entitlement, or even gaslighting. Instead of gratitude, you get condescension. Instead of empathy in return, you get exploitation. Your niceness doesn't soften them, it emboldens them. You may think you're helping, building a bridge of peace, trying to appeal to their better nature, but they don't want a bridge. They want a throne. They want worship, not connection. Narcissists carefully construct a persona, an inflated image of themselves as brilliant, important, attractive, and morally superior. Your attention, your admiration, your compliments, they become tools in service of that image. Every time you give in to their self-centered narratives or allow them to dominate conversations with their drama, you're confirming the story they tell themselves, that they are the center of your world, that they matter more than your truth, and that their needs come before yours. Setting boundaries with a narcissist isn't just important. It's essential for your emotional survival. Narcissists hate boundaries because boundaries represent limits, and limits are something they believe shouldn't apply to them. They believe they are entitled to your time, your energy, your empathy, your forgiveness, your resources, often without giving anything meaningful in return. The moment you try to draw a line and protect your emotional space, they see it as a challenge to their control. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not about controlling the narcissist. They're about protecting you. They are a declaration of your self-worth. When you begin to set boundaries, you are saying, my needs matter too. My voice deserves to be heard. My emotional space is sacred, and this is what narcissists despise. The idea that someone else might be independent of their influence, immune to their manipulation. Clear boundaries are not vague requests like, please don't hurt me again. They are direct, firm, and enforced with action. For example, saying, if you continue to raise your voice, I will leave the conversation. And then following through teaches them that your boundaries are not negotiable. You're no longer asking for respect, you're requiring it. At first, the narcissist may react aggressively. They may guilt, trip you, gaslight you, or attempt to manipulate you emotionally by playing the victim. They might say you're being too sensitive, unfair, or cold. But remember, those reactions are not signs you're doing something wrong. They're evidence that your boundaries are finally working. Narcissists are used to people bending, tolerating, and submitting. The moment you refuse to bend is the moment they realize they can't access you the way they used to. Boundaries must be consistent. A one-time boundary is often seen as a bluff by a narcissist, something they can eventually erode through pressure, guilt, or charm. But when your boundaries are clear, repeated, and upheld no matter how they react, you begin to shift the power dynamic. You take control not by dominating the narcissist, but by withdrawing their ability to dominate you. You protect your energy. You stop giving access to someone who never earned it. And in that shift, you begin to rebuild your inner safety, one boundary at a time. The gray rock method is one of the most effective tools when dealing with a narcissist especially when you can't go completely no contact, like in a workplace, co-parenting, or family setting. The concept is simple, but its impact is profound. You become as emotionally uninteresting and unreactive as a gray rock. Why? Because narcissists thrive on drama, attention, emotional reactions, and control. When you refuse to give them any of that, their ability to manipulate and feed off your energy starts to collapse. Narcissists are emotional predators. They are constantly looking for a reaction: anger, sadness, defensiveness, even praise. Anything that gives them a sense of power over your emotional state. When you argue, they win. When you cry, they feel significant. When you try to explain yourself, they feel superior. But when you go gray rock, when your responses become flat, short, and indifferent, you suddenly become boring. And for narcissists, boredom is emotional starvation. This technique isn't about being rude or cold. It's about emotionally detaching. It's about denying them the reward they're looking for. Instead of getting pulled into circular conversations, gaslighting tactics, or baited provocations, you remain calm, composed, and unengaged. If they criticize you, you don't defend yourself. If they brag, you don't validate them. If they try to provoke you, you give them nothing, no reaction, no emotion, no spark. You become like a stone, unmoved, unaffected. At first, this will frustrate them. They may escalate their efforts, become more dramatic, or lash out in new ways to get a reaction. That's because they're not used to being denied emotional supply. They may accuse you of being distant, cold, or passive-aggressive, anything to trigger guilt or re-engage your attention. But these are traps. They want you back in their emotional arena where they can regain control. Consistency is the key. If you gray rock once and then react the next time, they'll see it as a crack in your armor, proof that you're still emotionally invested and manipulatable. But if you stay consistent, if you maintain that dull, emotionless front, they will eventually become disinterested. They don't want people they can't provoke or manipulate. They want puppets, not people with emotional self-control. One of the most damaging illusions people fall into when dealing with a narcissist is the belief that somehow they can fix them, that if they just love them harder, are more patient, more forgiving, more understanding, then maybe the narcissist will change. Maybe they'll see the damage they're doing. Maybe they'll finally realize the pain they're causing and wake up to a moment of transformation. But that's not how it works. And the longer you stay in that cycle of hoping, trying, and giving, the more drained, disoriented, and broken you become. Narcissism isn't a surface-level character flaw that can be smoothed over with kindness. It is a deeply ingrained personality disorder rooted in fragile self-esteem, denial, entitlement, and emotional manipulation. A narcissist often lacks the one thing necessary for real change: genuine self-awareness. And without that, no amount of love or support can pull them out of their toxic behavior patterns. In fact, the more you try to help, the more they exploit your efforts, twisting your empathy into another form of control. You may think you're helping them grow by pointing out how their actions hurt others, or by showing compassion when they seem vulnerable. But narcissists often use vulnerability as a strategic tool. They know when to cry. They know when to act remorseful. They know what to say to reel you back in. But it's not real accountability. It's manipulation dressed in emotion. And if you respond to that by opening your heart wider, they will step right back in and repeat the same cycle again and again. Trying to heal a narcissist can consume your identity. You begin to believe that their improvement is your responsibility. That if you leave them, you're giving up on someone who just needs love. But that's a dangerous mindset because it turns your relationship into a project, a mission, a sacrifice. You stop being a partner or a person and start being their therapist, their emotional crutch, their punching bag. You give more than you can afford to lose, and they keep taking without ever truly giving anything back. You weren't put on this earth to repair someone who refuses to be honest about their own dysfunction. You are not the cure for someone's refusal to grow. Real change, real healing, real transformation, it requires effort, humility, and consistent accountability from the one who's broken the trust in the first place. But narcissists rarely take that path because it means admitting they are not perfect. It means giving up control. It means letting someone else be the center of the emotional equation. And for a narcissist, that feels like a threat to their very identity. If there's one powerful truth you must embrace when dealing with a narcissist, it's this: words lie, actions don't. Narcissists are masters of performance. They know exactly what to say, how to say it, and when to say it to manipulate your emotions. They can cry on command, confess sins they don't mean, and make promises they never intend to keep. Their words are designed not to build trust, but to disarm you, to keep you emotionally hooked and psychologically confused. They may say, "I've changed." They may swear they love you, that they'll never hurt you again, that this time it's different. But how many times have you heard that before? How many times have you believed the apology only to see the same toxic patterns reappear days or weeks later? The reality is that for a narcissist, words are just tools of manipulation. They use language not to communicate truth, but to control your perception of them, to shape a narrative where they are always the misunderstood hero, the wounded victim, or the savior you need. This is why it's essential to become a student of patterns, not promises. Look at their behavior not once, but consistently. Do their actions reflect humility, empathy, responsibility, and growth? Or do they show a cycle of guilt, tripping, love, bombing, gaslighting, and blame shifting? Narcissists often operate in predictable loops. They charm, they harm, they pretend to reform. Then they return to harming again. This cycle is powered by your willingness to believe their words over the evidence of your lived experience. Every time you forgive based solely on what they say rather than what they do, you're giving them another chance to reset the game in their favor. They count on that. They count on your hope. They count on your belief in their potential. But potential is meaningless without consistent behavior to back it up. You can't heal in a cycle. You can't grow in denial. And you can't reclaim your power if you keep silencing your intuition every time they feed you another well-rehearsed excuse. Narcissists study your emotional landscape. They know what you want to hear, especially if you're someone who values emotional connection. Healing or redemption, they will use flowery words, spiritual language, or even fake vulnerability to appear sincere. But sincerity isn't shown in the poetry of their promises. It's shown in the discipline of their daily decisions. And narcissists don't do well with accountability over time. They may play nice for a short while, but their true nature always resurfaces. When someone shows you over and over who they are through their actions, it's not your job to rewrite the story. It's your job to accept it as reality. One of the most damaging dynamics in any relationship with a narcissist is the constant need to justify yourself, your feelings, your choices, your boundaries, your truths. Narcissists are skilled at turning even the simplest decision into a courtroom cross-examination, and you are always on trial. They demand explanations, not because they want to understand you, but because they want to invalidate you. They want to twist your words, pick apart your reasoning, and leave you doubting your own reality. When you explain yourself to a narcissist, you may think you're building understanding. You may think, if I just clarify my side, maybe they'll get it. But that moment of vulnerability is exactly what they exploit. They will use your words against you, cherry-pick parts of your explanation, or flip the entire narrative so you end up feeling like the one who caused the problem. Their goal isn't resolution, it's control. It's keeping you emotionally off balance so they can continue to dominate the dynamic. Narcissists are not interested in compromise. They are not looking for common ground. They are looking for leverage. And the more you explain, the more ammunition you give them. Your words become twisted into accusations. Your emotions are labeled as overreactions. Your boundaries are portrayed as cruelty. This constant justification puts you in a defensive posture where you're always trying to prove that your pain is valid, your choices are reasonable, and your perspective deserves space. But you shouldn't have to prove your humanity. When you find yourself constantly explaining, "I didn't mean it that way. I only said that because you made me feel unsafe. I'm not trying to hurt you. I just need space." Understand that you are likely being emotionally manipulated into guilt. Narcissists specialize in making you feel like the abuser when you're really just trying to protect yourself. And once they get you into that emotional spiral, they regain the upper hand. You apologize for things you didn't do. You second-guess your instincts. You shrink yourself to avoid another lecture or outburst. Silence, brevity, and detachment become your power. A simple "no, I'm not available for that," or "that's not acceptable to me" is enough. You don't owe anyone long explanations, especially not someone who has shown time and again that they don't hear you. They only hear what they can twist. Your truth does not require their permission to be valid. The more you defend yourself, the more they see you as emotionally accessible, and accessibility to a narcissist is an invitation to dominate. With a narcissist, every justification becomes a negotiation, and in those negotiations, your needs always come last. One of the most empowering steps you can take when dealing with a narcissist is choosing distance. Whether that's emotional detachment, physical separation, or both. And while this can be one of the hardest decisions to make, it's also the most necessary for your long-term healing. Narcissists do not create safe spaces. They create chaos, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. The longer you stay within their orbit, the more you lose your sense of peace, identity, and control. But distance doesn't always mean packing a bag and walking away overnight. Sometimes, especially in cases where you're co-parenting, working together, or still legally tied, emotional distance becomes your lifeline. Emotional distance means detaching from their reactions, their bait, their games. It means refusing to be triggered by their insults, flattery, or silence. It means learning how to sit with their disapproval without needing to fix it. Because the truth is, you can't control how a narcissist responds, but you can absolutely control what you allow to reach your inner world. Physical distance, when possible, is a declaration of self-worth. It says, "I will no longer keep myself in a place where I'm constantly diminished." It's not about revenge. It's not about proving a point. It's about reclaiming space to breathe, to think clearly, to reconnect with yourself without someone constantly questioning your reality. Leaving doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. It means you finally chose truth over illusion, peace over chaos, and healing over repeated trauma. Narcissists often blur boundaries to keep you entangled. They may alternate between affection and cruelty, attention and abandonment, just to keep you confused. This keeps your nervous system in a constant state of hyper-vigilance, waiting for the next mood swing or manipulation. But once you create space, even mentally, that spell begins to break. You start to see clearly how much you've been tolerating and how much more you actually deserve. You begin to hear your own voice again after months or years of having it drowned out by theirs. The narcissist will resist this distance. They will attempt to reel you back in, not because they love you, but because they fear losing control. They may hoover, sending messages out of the blue, making promises, playing the victim, or even accusing you of being heartless. But don't confuse their pursuit with genuine care. What they miss is not you, it's the power they had over you. And when you create space, you take that power back. Choosing distance is not just an exit, it's an act of self-respect. It's a decision that says, I no longer accept a version of love that demands I abandon myself. Distance allows you to rebuild your self-esteem, restore your nervous system, and rediscover joy that isn't dependent on someone else's approval. It gives you the room to unlearn the lies they planted in your mind, lies about your worth, your strength, and your reality.